Hello, welcome to Scale Model Runway. Today I'm going to be building Revell's Vought F4U-1A Corsair in 1:72 scale. This is my first plane I've ever done. I've only built cars before, so I'm really looking forward to it. Hope it'll go well. Instructions in this kit were great. They were very informative, very clear. I was able to understand what everything meant. I really liked that. Nice and crisp. And the sprues were nice too. I was impressed by the amount of detail on them. And the kit came with some very nice clear canopies as well. I start with a mixture of 3 parts Tamiya gloss yellow to 3 parts Tamiya flat green, 2 parts rather, to paint. I use this on a lot of the interior parts. I'm going to start out by painting the front of the instrument panel for the cockpit. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to paint the instrument panel with some semi-gloss black. And this will just, there's going to be a decal that goes on to show all the gauges, but I still like to paint a color underneath just in case the decal doesn't show over some parts or something goes wrong. I think it's always good to have any pieces you have painted. So I'm going to go back with that mixture now, and I'm going to paint the interior of the fuselage of the plane. I'm going to go over this in multiple coats, so by the end it's going to have a lot better coverage than what you're seeing right now. I'm going to take my sharp side cutters. I'm going to cut out the parts that I need to make the front of the instrument panel for the cockpit. I like to paint the parts on the sprue because it gives me a lot more stability, especially with smaller pieces like that one right there. And that way I can get it all covered and painted well. I don't have to worry about keeping it still off the sprue. I'm going to take some Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. I really like this, especially for the tiny little stuff. It sticks very nicely. It's easy to use, easy to apply. Just all around a great tool. Now I'm going to apply the instrument panel decal. That's been soaking in warm water. It's soaked in warm water for 10 seconds, and then I let it dry on that paper towel for 30. And as you can see, it's really nice because it'll just slide right off. I don't want the water to be too hot. I use around 86 degrees. Just nice and warm. Gets it to separate easily. This was probably my favorite little detail of the kit, the seat belts. Now I'm going to assemble the back end of the cockpit. I glue the right instrument panel to the fuselage and do the same with the left instrument panel before we glue the whole thing together. Now I'm going to assemble the cockpit. Okay, now I'm going to use some Testors plastic cement that you brush on to attach the parts of the wings together. This was probably one of my favorite parts of the kit. Unfortunately, though, the fit was not too great, as you'll see later in the video. I like to use the Testors brush when I'm attaching large pieces like this. It just goes into the cracks really nicely and glues it together with a strong bond. Okay, I'm going to use some Tamiya putty to fix up little holes there were in the front of the plane. It didn't fit together as nicely as I would have hoped, but it's nothing I can't patch up. It was very jarring, though. I could see the inside of the wing, so it was good to fix this up. Now I'm going to glue the fuselage together. Once again, I'm going to use that Testors brush on cement. And I have the sticky tape I really like to use when I need to hold something together while I'm gluing it. It's not very good for masking, but I really do like it to use for this scenario. Okay, now I'm going to take some coarse sandpaper to the putty now that it's cured. It takes about a day, but the results are very nice. It fills in the gaps really nicely. I have a whole assortment of sandpaper, so I'm going to take it down with that too. Okay. Now I'm going to glue the fuselage onto the wings. I really like this because it finally felt like the plane was coming together. Felt like I had something. It was a tiny bit difficult though, because of the odd angle that it is on, but it wasn't too bad. Now I'm just going to attach the ends of the wings, the tail fin, and the tail wings as well. Now I'm going to begin painting the engine and assembling that. It goes behind the propeller. And here I'm painting the front of it with a light gray color. And now I'm going to paint I painted those parts of the engine gunmetal that you can see, and now I'm painting behind it black just to make it look like it all fits in. Unfortunately, on the inside of the engine, on the cowls, there were some pinholes that were really jarring, so I'm going to patch it up with some more putty and some more sandpaper. Now I'm going to start assembling the landing gear. Start out with some of that extra thin cement, gluing the wheels together. Now I'm going to glue the engine together. Now I'm going to paint the inside of the wheels with a flat aluminum color, or metallic rather. Now I'm going to paint the wheels with a flat black color. Now I'm going to glue the fully put together engine onto the front of the plane. I assembled the landing gear with the wheels and the struts as well. I'm going to create my Corsair in the position it would be in parked, so the landing gear is going to be out. Speaking of landing gear, now I'm going to paint the wheel wells with that same green and yellow mix. Butterfingers here. Okay, now I'm going to mask off the wheel wells for spray painting with some wet tissues. And just put them into the wheel wells and they dry up and mask it perfectly. It's a really nice solution. And there you go, there they are, fully masked. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue the canopy onto I've masked off the top canopy for spray painting. It took some painter's tape and a lot of effort. And there's the front of it masked off. So that way we can just spray the little thing. There's the engine. And now I'm going to start masking off for the first coat, which is going to be some gloss white. The plane's now fully masked, so I'm going to go take it outside to spray paint. In the meantime, I'm going to paint the rear landing gear. Unfortunately, it was too hot during the day to spray paint, so I had to spray paint at night and I couldn't get any good footage of it, so just going to get to see the end result, which is right there. There's the gloss white on the underside of the plane. And now I'm going to use some modeling clay that doesn't dry out unless it's baked. I'm going to roll it into a strip, and I'm going to use it to mask off some spots for soft lines in the camo. In the paint scheme, rather. It's not really camouflage on the Corsair. And it just sticks on the model really nicely. And you just masked off the rest, and it'll do great. Okay, there it is, fully masked off and ready for a coat of light blue. And there it is, it's light blue. As you can see, I had some trouble right there underneath the wing, but I can just paint over that with gloss white. Now I'm going to paint the propeller with that semi-gloss black that I've been using this whole time. A lot of stuff. Give it a couple coats so it looks good. You're going to paint the tips with gloss yellow. And there's the dark blue, the final coats, paint sprayed onto the plane, and there it is in its glory. I'm going to start preparing the landing gear now, so I just cut that in half so that I can have it in the open position. And I glue on the landing gear. You can see it's a very tight fit. And prepare the front landing gear as well. Drawers for that. I glued on with some Tester's plastic cement from the tube. It's really strong stuff, especially when you are putting a piece in an awkward position where it's prone to fall off. It does good. I'm going to attach the propeller. Now I'm going to begin applying the decals. I'm making Poppy Boyington's plane of the Black Sheep Squadron. So these are decals specifically for him. I did the same thing I did with the others. I let it soak for 10 seconds in warm water, let it dry for 30 seconds, then put it onto a smooth surface. When a decal isn't sticking very nicely like that is, I like to take a cotton swab and just smooth it out, get all the air bubbles out of it too. And whenever I have a decal that's going to be going over panel lines, I like to paint it with a little bit of Solvacet to get it to stick into all the recesses. It works really well. I like it a lot. I like these decals a lot. They're very good. Now, whenever I have really small decals like these labels on the propellers here, I like to paint it off with a fine brush. That just gives me a lot more control over where it goes, rather than using my finger like I do on the bigger ones. And once I get it onto the surface, I can brush it around with the brush too. Just get it right where I want it. Now that I have all the decals on, I'm going to paint it with a wash that is 1 part black to 3 parts water and 3 parts isopropyl alcohol. It'll just make it look like the plane's been in the heat of battle. It's taken some wear and tear over the years. Gives it a much more realistic look, I think. So I'm going to paint that on. And then I'm going to take a paper towel with some isopropyl alcohol on it and wipe off the excess wash that it leaves behind in all the creases, a grimy look, which is what I'm going for. You can see it right there on the decal, especially. Now I'm going to take a silver Prismacolor pencil, and this is very useful for doing some chipping effects. So I'm going to take that, and then I'm going to use the dot method, which is where I just make lots of little dots, like so, and I'll just make chips like that all over the plane, especially on the fronts of the wings, because that's where a lot of chipping occurs. Alright, I'm going to take these chalk pastels, and when the pilots would refuel the tank or walk into the cockpit, they would leave mud all over the side of the wing right there. So I'm going to take the pastels and I'm going to crush them up into fine powder. And then I'm just going to take a brush and apply it to the inside of the wing right there. Now I'm going to glue on the antenna wire with a black thread. I use the Tester's plastic cement from the tube for this as well. It sticks really strong and it dries pretty quickly. So I can just cut the excess off once I've glued the thread in place. And with that, the model's finished. I hope you enjoyed watching. This has been Scale Model Runway. Be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more aircraft coming in the future.